So you're just in a car crash and you were hurt and you don't know what to do. Perfectly fine, because most people, the reality is they get in very few car crashes in their entire lifetime. Some people get in none their entire lifetime. Some people only get in one. But what if that one car crash case that you were in leaves you with some injuries that are long-term problems for you? So what are you going to want to do? Because it's important to get a bunch of things on the front end, because the reality is if you don't, that stuff is going to go away. And by that stuff, I mean evidence. So in the legal world, we call it evidence. In lay terms, in real people terms, we're just going to call it stuff. But what should you do? Obviously, I think everybody knows if you get in a car crash and you're hurt or somebody else is hurt, you should call 911, have an ambulance come out, check that person out, get yourself checked out. Also have the police come, and that way they can do a report. In Florida, if you have more than $5,000 of damage between the two cars, you have to have a report done. If there's somebody that's injured, you have to have a report done also, right? So there are times that you absolutely have to, that state law requires that to be. Small exception in Florida is that if you're on private property, doesn't matter as long as there's no injuries, no police report. So it doesn't matter how big the property damage is. If you're, say, in a Publix parking lot and someone backs into you, if no one's hurt, or at least hurt on scene, right? Can be a difference there, hurt on scene, then you don't have to have a police report. Next thing you're really going to want to do is you want to take your phone. Everybody's phones have cameras on them now, right? Or for the most part, everybody's does. Although I think Nokia is making a small comeback here with the flip phones of old school. But take a lot of pictures. Take pictures of the intersection or wherever it happened, the street that it happened on. Look for any skid marks. Take those pictures. Skid marks are less and less now because of anti-lock brakes, but you can sometimes still see some marks in the road. They disappear very quickly, but as you're on scene right there, go ahead and grab those pictures of the damage to both cars. If there's any question of who was driving, maybe take a picture of them. If maybe you suggest that the other person, or suspect rather, that the other person was drunk and you're waiting for the police to come, or you're afraid the person's going to run, take some video, right? Get that person's actions as it's happening. Okay, those are kind of the immediate things that you're going to want to do while you're immediately on scene. Obviously, then when law enforcement gets there, follow whatever their directions are. If they tell you to move the car, move the car. If they tell you to leave it there, leave it there. Obviously, if the car is disabled and the damage is so bad that you can't move it, obviously you won't be able to, and they'll bring a tow truck. One of the things you may not necessarily think of or go over right off is, hey, I'm gonna need a tow truck. Well, the police, they'll provide you one. Okay, they have what's called rotation wreckers, is what they call it in that side of things. But if you have AAA, you can use your AAA. So you have options. You don't have to use their tow truck, but you're gonna need a tow truck, get the car off the road, out of the scene of the crash. That's really where we kind of stop for what to do immediately after a crash when we're talking about right on scene. Now, what you're gonna want to evaluate is, do you need to go to the hospital? Do you have a concussion? Do you have a traumatic brain injury? Do you have physical injuries that require you to go to the hospital? Okay, the insurance companies are gonna say, hey, why don't you go to the hospital in an ambulance? They love to ask that question. And the reality is, not everybody wants to take an ambulance ride. An ambulance ride costs money. But if you go to the hospital same day, to me, that's just as good. Okay, if you go to the hospital the next day, once again, to me, it's just as good. If you have catastrophic injuries from your crash, you're gonna kind of know it, or maybe you won't actually know it because you won't be conscious to have an awareness of it. And an ambulance will take you right from there to the hospital. But get yourself checked out medically. A lot of times the injuries from car accidents, they tend to fester a little bit throughout the rest of the day, right? And then you start to realize it. So if you have a crash in the morning, by that evening, you start to feel sore, stiff, maybe not right, maybe your head's a little foggy. Those are all indicators of injuries, okay? And it's something you're gonna wanna get checked out to see if there's anything going on. You have discs in your back, okay? So you have these bones that are your vertebrae, and in between each of those are these, they're kind of like jelly donuts, right? And when you flex, when you're in a crash, the jelly in that donut can get squirted out. Have you ever tried to put the jelly back in a donut? Doesn't work, right? Same thing with the discs in your spine. Once that bulges out, once that comes out, there's no putting it back in. So You may want to get that looked at, because if you have numbness, tingling, it's going to be a result, or it can be a result of that jelly donut getting pushed out into your spinal cord. Bad thing, right? Or depending on what area of the spine, it could be just pushing on your nerves. Really very important to get that checked out. What should you be doing as the person that's in the crash? Really, at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to worry about dealing with the insurance company. Generally speaking, they're not going to want to treat you fairly. They're going to want to pay you as little as possible, right? And that's going to be, they're going to want to just take care of whatever little medical bills you have right on the outset. They're not going to want to take on these big, massive medical bills, and they're not going to want to pay you your pain and suffering. And they're going to overwhelm you. It happens, right? Best play is worry about your medical. Call an attorney to handle all of the pieces of the puzzle in terms of how to get your medical bills paid, how to get your future medical care taken care of, how to get your pain and suffering, how to get any lost wages. And remember, with lost wages, if you take PTO time or sick time from work to go to the doctor as a result of the crash, that counts as lost wages. So really very important. There's a lot of pieces to that, and there's a lot of things that by law that person who caused the crash owes you. And it's a really difficult thing for somebody not in the industry and not in this business to try to tackle on their own. You should just be worried about, as the person who was in the crash, getting to the doctor, feeling better, and getting your life back to some normalcy. Get yourself a good lawyer to take care of all of the other stuff, right? Get those medical bills taken care of, get that pain and suffering taken care of. Deal one-on-one with the insurance company, okay? We talked a lot about injuries, but also your car was damaged. And there's a lot of different pieces that can be looked at. One, if the car wasn't a total loss, maybe you have diminished value. And we go, well, what's diminished value? If you were to sell the car after having been in a crash, it's now worth less than it was prior to the crash. And that person who hit you, guess what? They're responsible for that amount, okay? And it's something that we fight over with the insurance companies. We get experts who tell us this is the value of that car before the crash, this is the value of it after the crash. That number in between is your diminished value, okay? There are lots and lots and lots of pieces to the puzzle. There's lots of evidence to gather. There's event data recorders in all cars now. Every car since I believe 2014 has this event data recorder. It tells us the speed. It tells us how the cars were moving at the time of the crash. It tells us a lot of great information that we can then take and go, hey, insurance company, this is why your insured was wrong. This is why, and this is how severe the crash was. Hey, Mr. Insurance Company, you're insured, the person who caused this crash, their foot didn't just slip off the brake pedal and it was a 1 mile an hour crash. No. This event data recorder says it was a 15 mile an hour crash. Or it says, hey, speed limit was 40, they were doing 55, okay? It gives us a lot of information. We take that, we take scene pictures, we get all of the evidence that we can put together, the property damage pictures, and we take that and go, insurance company, this is why this person should get paid this amount, whatever that amount is that you would discuss with your attorney and figure out. That's called your damages. All those things that I listed earlier, those are your damages, right? Damages equal dollars. All right, so that's why it's really very important for you, what you should do, all those things I mentioned right at the outset. Then after that, worry about your medical treatment. Get yourself somebody to take care of the rest of the stuff after that. The Law Father is here for all of your needs, whether it's on social media or YouTube, give you those little nuggets of information that you need to make your life maybe a little bit better. Always like and subscribe.